To check and see if the player is on the ground, we're going to use the line cast action. So let's go back to physics 2D and find line cast. Right, so what this essentially does is it casts a line from the game object to a point, and if there are objects in between these 2 points, if this artificial line hits an object, we can decide what to do with it. We can store the object that's hit into a variable, or we can simply store it, if there's anything that's hit, into a bool variable. Right, so I've just added the line cast action into the state, and now we need a point for this line to go. Right, we need a point to check and see if anything is in between these 2 points. So I'm going to create a new empty game object. I'm going to call this ground check, and I'm going to simply drag this into the player so that it's part of it's a child object of the player. I'm going to add an icon since it doesn't have any mesh data on it. So that this is simply so that we can see it in the editor. And I want to just reposition this and move it down just a little bit so that it's slightly below the box collider. So what this does now is the line cast action is going to create a line from this game object to this point, and if there's anything that hits this line, we are going to be able to use that information here. Okay, so let's go to variables, and I'm just going to create a simple bool variable called is grounded, and it's going to be false to start with because the character is in midair when we start the game. And let's go back to the state, go to the line cast action again, and first let's drag ground check to the to game object field here. So we're casting from the game object to the ground check object, and we're going to store the result of the check to is grounded. So when the line hits anything, it's going to say, oh, it's grounded now. Let's just have a quick test. There's one more thing we need to do, which is we want to make sure that we're only checking against the floor. Right, so let's go to the floor object, click on layer, and I already added the floor layer, so I can select it here, but if you haven't, click on layer, add layer, and then just add a new floor layer there. But let's make the floor on the floor layer. I can just change this object only, that's fine, because this is the only object with a 2D collider. And let's come back to the state. And if you scroll down to layer mask, and let's change that to 1, and change the element to floor. So this means we're only checking against objects in the floor layer. Okay. Now if we hit play, you can see that now the grounded variable is set to true, because now the player is standing on the ground. If I move this player, you can see that when it's in the air, this variable is set to false. So it's constantly checking from the line cast. Great. So the next step is easy. Now we have a variable that tells us if the player is on the ground. We can just do that. So if we add a bool test action to the jump state, and we say, well, if it's grounded, if it's true, then continue to the next step. If it's not grounded, it's finish, and we will not set the velocity to the player. So let's hit play. Now we can jump, but we can only jump once, because when the character is in midair, we're not allowing it we're not allowing the set velocity 2D to be run again.